This lecture is on the Columbian Exchange. Um, in this lecture, we're going to take a look at um, what the exchange was and the advantages and disadvantages for each side. What the effects of the Columbian Exchange were. Understand that the Columbian Exchange was the interchange of plants, animals, commodities, and diseases between the Old World, Europe, Asia, Africa, and the New World. So it's really important for you to be able to recognize that there were a number of benefits that flowed from the New World to the Old, and quite a few costs that went the other way. You can see here from the diagram that there were a great deal of items that Europeans brought over from Europe, Africa, and Asia. Coffee beans, turnips, olives, onions, citrus fruit, grapes, bananas, sugarcane, honeybees, peaches, grains, livestock, and then the biggie, disease. And this is really, disease ends up being the most devastating of the things that the European explorers and colonizers bring with them to the New World. In exchange, squash, sweet potatoes, pumpkins, peppers, tobacco, turkeys, pineapples, peanuts, cocoa, potatoes, tomatoes, beans, vanilla, corn are among the many items that went from the Americas to Europe. And there were a number of significant effects this had on Europe. Had tremendous economic effects. Things like the like corn and the potato. These were items that could be grown in not necessarily the greatest of soil. Potatoes in particular. Potatoes will be significant to promoting population growth in Europe because peasants, the lower classes, will be able to grow tremendous amounts of potatoes in just a small area, and they'll be able to feed their families from this. A lot of these foodstuffs will contribute to a larger population in Europe, and they'll really help fuel the trade, going back and forth. Now, as I said, there are some downsides here, and there were really Europe had a number of advantages before coming over to the New World, coming over to the Americas. A number of advantages, many of which really had to do with location. This is actually addressed in the book Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. And in this, understand that what he's talking about isn't geographic determinism, which has a history of being associated with overly racist connotations, although Jared Diamond was accused of this initially. But a deeper reading of the book reveals that what Diamond was getting at was that there are certain geographic factors. If you take a look at these two maps, first on the upper left, the orientation of a continent. Most trade occurs east to west early on. Most of the early civilizations, whether it's the Fertile Crescent in Mesopotamia, Nile River civilization, Indus River civilization, Chinese civilization, all of those civilizations all occurred, really, if you take a look right here, it really happened right through here. They happened those civilizations all existed kind of along the same latitude. And this is going to be significant in the fact that when the first trade routes are established, they will be all in line with each other. These civilizations all form at the same latitude. Not a surprise. That becomes the first of the most ideal places where farming first takes root. But also, being the same latitude makes it easier for movement. There's a greater desire to move east to west. Moving north to south, there's generally significant climate changes, environmental changes, and there oftentimes isn't a significant movement from north to south. Take Africa, for instance. North Africa develops significantly different than South Africa. And part of this has to do with the fact that you have the Sahara Desert, which really creates a natural barrier preventing that. With the Americas, there are a number of different climates and environments going from north to south, and certain geographic obstacles in the way. The mountains run right through from the Rocky Mountains down to the Andes Mountains, and they run right through Central America. This prevents or hinders travel north to south. And in fact, the greatest civilizations or empires in the Americas, you have those in South America, primarily the Inca, and then in Central America, you had the different Mesoamerican civilizations like the Maya and the Aztec. These groups, though, did not move north to south. They moved within their region, east and west, and really not that far. So there wasn't a lot of interaction. The lack of interaction is going to be significant. And another significant aspect here is domesticated animals. Now, in Afro-Eurasia, there are 13 of the 14 large domesticated animals or mammals could be found in Europe or Asia or Africa. Only one of the large domesticated animals exists in the Americas. Is native to the Americas, I should say, and that's the llama. Of these 14 large domesticated animals, and when we say large domesticated animals, these are animals that have been not just tamed, raised in mass for the purposes of hauling goods, for the purpose of food, just for multiple purposes. Of these 14, only 5 are standard farmyard animals: the goat, sheep, horse, pig, and cow. None of which can be found in the Americas. Now, why is this significant? Well, early domestication of animals demanded that people be in close proximity with them to protect those animals from predators. And so the people being in close proximity meant they were sleeping out there with their animals, tending to their goats, sheep, tending to their horses, pigs, cows. What happens is a lot of the sicknesses or diseases that these animals carry spread to humans. Again, 13 of the 14 domesticated animals, large domesticated animals on the planet, could be found in Afro-Eurasia. Again, the east-west orientation of the continent allows the exchange of these animals, but not just that, it's the fact that these groups are trading with one another, plus the diseases that they get from the animals, they end up spreading those to each other. If you think back to the Black Plague, the this was a disease that was being spread by fleas, helped along by the animals in society. So all of this stuff kind of comes in, and because you have greater human interaction, you have a lot of natural immunities to a lot of different sicknesses. Whereas in the Americas, you don't have a lot of this. Many of the groups of people, because the orientation of the continents of North and South America is north to south, you have less movement of people. They typically move easier east to west, but because the great civilizations are where they are, there are these great physical barriers preventing them from interacting with one another. And what this ultimately does is it keeps them from interacting, so it prevents the possibility of any type of disease or sickness from spreading from one group to another. Again, the llama was the only domesticated animal, large domesticated mammal in the Americas, and that could be found in South America. Again, animals don't easily travel to different regions where there's a significant climate difference. So these are factors that, when you look at the bigger picture, many Native American groups did not have immunities to the various diseases that were carried by domesticated animals, whereas people in Africa, Europe, and Asia were exposed to these. So when Europeans came to the Americas, they were immune to these diseases. They were bringing these diseases with them and then exposing the Native Americans to them, and they were dying in massive amounts. At the time, the Europeans had no idea why this was the case. And eventually, they started figuring it out, and they started using it to their advantage. Another factor is in the fact that the societies in Africa, Europe, Asia had a well-developed system of writing and record keeping, and this is going to be very, very significant, not so much in terms of the with what's going on with the between Cortez and the Aztecs, but the fact that this record keeping, the fact that they do keep histories. Many Native American societies did not have a system of writing. The Incas, for instance, did not have a system of writing, so they did not have an extensive history to go upon, whereas what Cortez does with the Aztecs, and ultimately to overthrow Montezuma, he had divided and conquered the people. He had he sets up a blueprint that Pizarro then follows when dealing with the Inca. The Inca have no idea that this is going on, but the Europeans are keeping active records of this. And again, a lot of this has to do with cultural interactions with one another. Again, European interactions, there was a greater spread of knowledge, exchange of knowledge between civilizations or peoples of Europe, Africa, and Asia than there could be found in the Americas. And because of that, there were a lot of advantages, not just with writing, but also technological advantages. The fact that the Europeans had superior weapons. This is also significant. And this really goes back to really the title of Jared Diamond's book, Guns, Germs, and Steel. Those are the three major factors which ultimately give the Europeans a greater advantage when conquering the Americas. So that's the conclusion of this lecture. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to post in the general board.